And today we're going to show you the thing. So if I have some type of table, right? So yesterday we talked about how many presentation they are. So let's talk about. So yesterday we kind of recap everything yesterday. The first one we talked about yesterday, we talked about, it was approximation. There's a right Riemann sum, left Riemann sum, midpoint rule, and trapezoid rule. And the trapezoid, you might not write it down, but the equation is base 1 plus base 2 over 2 times the height. And the reason being that is, like if I have a trapezoid, now I put this trapezoid this way just to show you. Now just say this is a 4 and this is 6, right? So it's average of 4 and 6. Why does that work? Because the average of 4 and 6, you make it become a rectangles. I don't know if you know what I meant. So that means you cut off this. If you average, this length is gonna be 5. Does that make sense? This length is gonna be 5. Does that make sense? And then, so this triangle just fit into right here. So it's average of 2 base multiplied by the height. So you just basically make the trapezoid become a rectangle. And that's the way the calculation come in play. So a lot of time people says, well, I don't know what that is. Or just know it's a rectangle, but the average of the other width. That's pretty much the way to memorize that. Now, for the trapezoid rule, in this purpose, we tended to turn the trapezoid this way, so the width becomes the height. So the width is equal to height in this particular cases because we're going to show you what happened. Now, pay attention when it's over approximation, under approximation. Yesterday we talked about that, right? If function increasing, the right endpoint is going to be over approximation. A decreasing, your right endpoint is going to be under approximation. If it's concave up, then it's going to affect the trapezoid as opposed to affecting other things. So you have to pay attention to that. Concave down. So yesterday we talked about that. And so that affecting of overestimation and underestimation require justification on AP exam for FRQ. So you have to say something like it's over approximate, and because you're asking for right Riemann sum and function is increasing. So you have to say it's increasing right Riemann sum, therefore it's overestimate. So they don't want essays, they just want you to write down those key informations. Now AP exam does give you the regular interval or irregular interval. So I want you to pay attention to something else too. If it's regular intervals, then they will be more likely testing on all possible things, but a very, very exclusive midpoint rule is the one that they will test more often on regular intervals because it's exactly same interval, so it's really easy to take a midpoint of something. Okay, so it's like 2, 4, 6. Then the midpoint is going to be 4. So you have to have a regular interval to do that. For irregular interval, it's most AP exam questions. So this actually becomes more popular. I will say this is more popular because each width are a little bit different. So the way you do calculation, you had to be very specific towards things. Does that make sense? The second way they will ask you is a function. They will give you a function. They will give you a weird function too. They will give you like 4 to the x or 9 to the x, which is on my test, I give you 9 to the x. And you have to break up those intervals and you have to figure out, plug in, It's going to be like maybe 9 to the half power or 9 to the 3 over 2 power. And you have to figure out how to do 9 to the 3 over 2 power. Yeah.
So, sorry, just clarifying for the regular interval and irregular interval, what is a regular interval? And then what's like an example of an irregular interval? Like how do we determine that?
Okay, that's a really good question. So if you see this, right, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Each width has exactly uniform intervals. So for example, 1 to 3, the distance is 2. So it's 2, 2, 2, 2. Do you see from here to here is 2, from here to here is 2, from here to here is 2, from here is 2. Now, if I just skip the 3 part, if I say 1, 5, 7, 9, then that's going to be irregular because the first rectangle is going to have much wider width as opposed of just 2. And the second one is different. So they are regular interval. So regular interval, I will take account into like this equation. And this equation is not hard to understand. B minus A over N. So in this case, it's going to be 9 minus 1 because the last endpoint is 9. The first endpoint is 1. Divided by how many rectangles? 4. So therefore it's 2. So the each width is 2. So instead of visually see this is 2, you can actually calculate them and to know that's 2. So 9 minus 1 over 4, right? It's equal to 2. Does that make sense? Now, if I do right approximation, I will write out the step. This step is really important. I can say 2 to the f of 9 plus 2 to the f 7 plus 2 to the f5 plus 2 to the f3. Now, why did I not including f of 1? Yes?
It's right, and you're only using the largest values to go from there.
Yeah, so use 9753 as opposed of 1357. I don't use all 5 values because I only have 4 rectangle. I don't have more than 4 rectangle. So I only can choose 4 values. The 4 value has to be 5 right or 5 left. Now sometimes you're going to have to do middle. Right? So on AP exam, really focus on you doing this part. Why is that? Because what if you calculate wrong and you press the wrong key and you get 63 instead of 64, and then you have no justification of it. So by writing this part down, it's going to reinforce you to get the point even you calculate wrong. So if you calculate a 63 as opposed to 64 because you pressed one key wrong, then the grader is going to go back and look at it. Says, hey, this person actually knows what he's doing, but he just typed in the key wrong. So by writing out this 2-step, it's a very, very important when you calculate something. Does this make sense? Now, with the same question, I can use left and approximation. But pay attention to the 2 equal rectangles. So I don't want it to have 4 rectangles. I want to base on 2 equal rectangles and use the left endpoint. So I cannot use 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Instead, I do what? Well, each rectangle is going to be 4 now instead of 2, right? Does that make sense? B minus A, which is 9 over 2, is 4. So 4 times f of what? Well, it's left Riemann sum, so I cannot pick. I cannot pick 3 and 7 because I only have 2 rectangles. So I had to pick 1 and 5. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Or I'm on crack?
Can you go
Okay, so do you understand this one? Do you understand the right Riemann sum?
I don't understand why those why f of y f of 5 f of 3 specifically.
Because it's right end, so you don't use when x is 1, because that's the furthest to the left.
Okay.
And you only use,
And
you
so-
use 1 less than, remember yesterday?
Yeah.
So remember yesterday we talked about 5 trees, right? But there was only in 4 space. So 4 space, I had to base only 4 value. I can pick the right 4 or the left 4, depends on the situation, depending on the questions asking me. So therefore, I only pick the 9, I only pick the 9, the 7, the 5, and 4 for the y value.
Okay.
Right? I don't pick the 1 because if I say that's a right end approximation. Now, second question is a little bit different. The second question asks for the left end. And left end has 2 equal. Right? If I have 2 equal, what will do? Well, if it's 2 equal, that means if it's 2, then I have to base on this one and this one. Why is that? Because if you got, just think about a tree situation. You got 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, right? So if I have 2 equal, it's going to be from here to here, from here to here. Does that make sense? So each width is going to be 4 instead of 2. But since I use left end point, so I may use this one and this one. Does that make sense? Are we clear? Before any confusion? No? Yes.
For the left end, how do you get the 4?
4 is the width. So because from here to here is 4, from here to here is 4. Because the 2 equal. So if I do 2 equal, then that's going to be 4. Yes.
When you're doing like the left end approximation, why can't you just do like f of 1, 3, 5, and 7 and just not include the 9? Instead of doing like 2 equal rectangles, just do like...
No, because the question will ask you says 2 equal interval. So if it's 2 equal interval, has to be like this and like this.
Okay.
Right? And you have to use all the values, so therefore I will use 1 and 5 as opposed to anything else.
When you're writing the formula, just for like the right hand part, for like where you're doing like 2 times like f of a, wouldn't it be f of
2 times f of 9.
Oh, that's 9. Okay, I saw a. Sorry. Just confused. Thank you.
Yes.
What is the rule at the bottom say?
This one here
Yeah.
is a 4 times f of 1. Why is f1? Because I use the first left endpoints, right? And the second left endpoint is going to be I had to use 5 because it's a 1 to 5 and a 5 to 9. I'm going to use 1, 5, 9, but left end is going to be 1 and 5. Does that make sense? And Dashan, where's your glasses?
At home.
Okay. Can you see? You'll move up here.
I can see, I'm just like kind of confused why it's 2, or like 2 times f of f, or like whatever,
2 times f of 9.
no, like 2 times all of them, like
Just choose the one.
2 is a width because the 1 to 3 is 2, 3 to 5 is 2, 5 to 7 is 2, 7 to 9 is 2.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, so what if I ask you the next part? What if I ask you says, hey, can I use a midpoint? Now, obviously, midpoint I cannot use for rectangle because I don't have the value at 2, 4, 6, 8. So midpoint with 2 equal rectangle, what would it be?
3 and 7.
Why?
Because those are like the midpoints of...
Yeah. So be 4 of f of 3 plus 4 of f of 7. Does that make sense? Because I don't use 1 and 5 and 9 now. Because I'm going to use in middle of 1 and 5, it's going to be 3. And middle of 5 and 9 is going to be 7. Yes.
So is it always gonna tell you like how many rectangles you need to break?
Yes, they will say how many subinterval they are.
Oh, okay.
So they can trick you by, if you don't read that part, then that's the one that's going to trick you. Does that make sense? Now, we're going to show you an example for irregular one. And I'm not going to do a too complicated one, but I'm just going to build a table that just say x and y. Right? And I'm going to build it, let's say, between 1 is 15 and 2, that's the 5 is going to be 20, and the 8 is going to be 12. Do you see? I'm just only do 3. Oh, 2, sorry. I can do a lot of different things. So in this case, this is called irregular. Irregular is not like before, everything is 4. Now this one is going to be different. So if I were to use right Riemann sum, so let's just say if I use right Riemann sum, a right Riemann. So the way I kind of think about it, I will draw this. It's just me. It's up to you. Because I'm more visual person, so I will draw it out. Right, 1, 5, 8, right? So I will say, I will mark this point as 12, and a little bit higher is 20, and this is 15. This makes sense. And if I use right endpoint, I will learn to draw it. Right? Right endpoint. So I'm going to base on the right. Does that make sense? So I'm going to use the 20, and I'm going to use the 12, the height. So in this case, it's going to be 3 times what? 12. Does that make sense? Why is 3? Because 8 to 5 is 3, right? And this is 4, right? Plus 4 times 20. Does that make sense? Yes.
So does it not matter if there's an equal space between each of the rectangles? It's just like...
Yeah, so sometimes they give you irregular interval. So you have to take account of each width is a little bit different.
Okay.
So that's why I get 3, and that's why I get 4 instead of just always 4.
So like that's the only thing different is that you just have to like pay attention to what the interval is as opposed to just making them all the same.
Yeah, that's why I say it's so easy to make mistake. A lot of time, like people make mistake. Now, if today I want to do trapezoid rule, right? That's it. If I do trapezoid rule, because they cannot do, if it's irregular, they cannot do a midpoint. Do you see what I'm saying? I cannot just say it's midpoint here because 5 is not midpoint of 8. So I cannot use a midpoint with one rectangle. That doesn't work. So you say, well, what can we test you on this one? The most popular one is going to be trapezoid. Why? I'm going to do a trapezoid here. I'm going to do 1, and I'm going to label this as a 15. And this 5, I'm going to label it 20 because I'm going to label higher. And 12 is going to be right here. And that's going to be 8. Does that make sense? So I'm going to draw a trapezoid. Boom, boom, boom. And then boom, boom, boom. So this is going to be 4. This is going to be 3. So the height, becomes the height now. Right? So this is a 2 width, 2 base. So it'll be 15 plus 20 over 2 times the first height, which is 4, plus 20 plus 12 over 2 times the width is 3. Does that make sense? 2 base, but just 15 and 20. And this is the height, 4, because the trapezoid is this way. So the width becomes the height. And then 20 and 12 over 3. So 20 and 12 over 3. So I would do the calculation of this. It end up to be a value. I have no idea what that value is. And I don't really care. Even I write this out, a lot of time AP exam will give you credit already. As opposed to you simplify out of the way. Anybody is confusing. If you're confusing, it's better ask now.
So, say that our table was larger, and like you had other values, like you had other values past 12, so you had like 3 or whatever, and then you had other values like past 15, or like something like that. So you would find like the middle of those numbers, and then you would take like, so like 20 is always included. But then
Where'd you get 20 from?
You take like the left, and then you take the right from 20.
Okay, okay, first of all, this is irregular, and are you asking midpoint or trapezoid?
Trapezoid.
Okay, trapezoid. So do you see this is a 15? This is a height is a 15. From here to here is 15. And this is 20, and this is 12. Do you see that? So basically, you just count each trapezoid. So I'm going to look at first, count into the first trapezoid. The first trapezoid has a height of 4. So that's a 4 right here. And I have 15 and 20. So 15 and 20 over 2. Because that's a base 1, base 2 over 2.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that makes sense.
And this one is going to be 12. This one's 20. So 12, 20 over 2 times the width is 3. The width is the height of the trapezoid.
Okay.
Anybody else any question? Sydney? It's good, Laura, you're asking question. A lot of time you're not asking as much question and just kind of, just kind of like compress and just say, oh, I think I got it. But asking questions is better than I think I got it. Do you guys understand? Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to practice. And this is a classwork / homework because this is a second sheet of homework. This is a first year homework. The first year homework looks like this. On your Emodo, if you open up your Emodo, you're gonna have one sheet. But I'm gonna give you the clue of the answer on this one, so you can work before the class end. So you can go through A, B, C, D. So look at the question here. Do you see the difference? Okay. What the? Do you see the difference between the interval between first question and second question? Do you see that? Well, no, first question and second question. Do you see that the interval is a little bit different? The second one is irregular. The first one's regular intervals. So you got to pay attention to that. The first one's always 20. The second one is not always 20. So now I write down a number 10. That means all the digit number is the first question is going to be 3-digit number add up to be 10. Second one is also 10. Sorry, I don't know. Combination of 10 is a lot, a 3-digit number. C is going to be 13, D is going to be 16. The second question is all 5-digit number to add up to be 13, 18, and 29. So by practicing through those questions, you will see what the quiz is going to be like this, which is you all going to have on Friday. And we are gonna well, actually, that's not a quiz. That's a test going to be including the U substitutions. So you're gonna have to go back, figure out how well you do on U substitution, and try to understand everything on U substitution. I haven't finished grading it. I'll finish grading today. Yep. It's on Emodo. And this is a classwork, so it's not home. It's the classwork is gonna be like this, but this is a good practice of what's going to be on the test. And also going to give you a second part of homework. This is the first part. Oh, that's a problem. Why is that?